Good evening, everybody. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us at this Geo-economics survey of the Middle East. As you must now have seen from our propaganda that we are looping in HD behind me, the IISS is truly an international organization, headquartered in London with international offices in Bahrain, Singapore, and Washington. This allows us to maintain a uniquely global perspective that is underpinned by our complete intellectual independence. One of the programs directed from our Bahrain office and by my colleague, the legendary Dr. Sanjaya Baru, is a Geo-economics and strategy program. In this, we have endeavored to build a strand of our work that links up our traditional analysis on security, politics, and conflict with economics, development, and stability. Over the past few years, we have endeavored to bridge these critical themes and, among other issues, have explored the changing balance of power of the multilateral trading system, fiscal stress, global military balances, and regional security, the geopolitics of currencies, reserves, and the global financial system. Mindful of geopolitical shocks and stresses, we will continue to integrate the Geo-economic and strategy program within other IISS programs, in particular cybersecurity, for which we will be publishing a strategic dossier imminently, and also on transnational threats. Indeed, next year we will be holding a conference here in Bahrain examining transnational organized crime, threats and responses. The IISS convenes a large number of international meetings, and our flagship Dialogue Security Summits in Singapore, here in Bahrain, and from next year also in Colombia, draw together governmental leaders in circumstances that they would not otherwise be able to bring about themselves. These gatherings strengthen regional systems of security architecture and encourage open debate on crucial issues. However, these summits are almost a byproduct of our real mandate, which is providing policy-relevant analysis, which we inject into circles of decision makers. To that end, we have ensured that we retained a session on the agenda tomorrow to highlight this work and set the geopolitical context for the geo-economic discussions to follow. Without the vision and support of His Excellency Kamal for this program, as well as for other activities of the IISS in Bahrain, this would not be possible. So I take this opportunity to thank him and the government of Bahrain as patrons and sponsors of much of our work in the Middle East. His Excellency Kamal will not need introducing to most of you, and you can also read his official biography. However, what it doesn't say is that Kamal is a tireless worker with a quick and decisive mind. His portfolio is not a light one, but he seems, at least from an observer's perspective, to revel in its challenges. Kamal, I thank you again for your support, and I'll waste no more time by asking you to take the floor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. I am very pleased to be speaking to you here tonight, and allow me first to take this opportunity to thank the International Institute for Strategic Studies for organizing and arranging this event. We are fortunate to have one of the world's leading think tank located right here in Bahrain, and I think tomorrow panel sessions is a perfect example of what an organization like IISS can bring with it. The subject of this event is focused on business opportunity and political risk in the GCC and the Middle East. And I know from experience that such events tend to focus on the political risk only. And given the event in the region at the moment, this will probably be the case once again tomorrow. Therefore, with that in mind, I will take the chance now to make a few remarks about on the other side of the equation. I will talk more about economic opportunity, about where the GCC economies are now and what we have to do if we want to make sure that we don't squander the prosperity we have created during the past decades. While most attention recently have understandably been on political events in the broader Middle East, what has perhaps been less noticed is that the GCC is in a very enviable position in comparison to the most economies. Developed countries across the world are dealing with a number of acute challenges: depressed demand, low inflation, household deleveraging, public deficits, and secular stagnation. At the same time, many emerging markets have had to worry about the possible impact of tightening monetary policy in the US or about domestic credit bubbles. In the GCC, by contrast, we have arguably a strong fundamental compared to other regions in the world. We have strong, resilient economic growth, sustainable public finance and household balance sheets, current account surpluses, strong government revenue from hydrocarbons, and bright prospects for the future growth, as those revenue are invested in a project aimed at spurring economic diversification. So how did the GCC get into this position? Of course, a strong oil price has clearly been helpful. But what has perhaps been less acknowledged is that we are now seeing the fruits of a hard work of reform. Everyone in this room is aware of how hard these reforms can be to put in place and make effective. Likewise, it is easy to make proclamations about what you want to achieve, but putting in place difficult policies that sacrifice some short-term advantages or upset some domestic constituencies in order to secure prosperity in 20 years' time is a very different matter. Of course, the Gulf has long been blessed with resources, but the reform that we have made have meant that we are now making better use of them, the resources, than we did in the past. More and more revenues have been invested domestically in sectors that are characterized by increasing productivity and which have helped to create quality jobs for GCC citizens. We have also taken steps to invest in infrastructure that has made the region a key point in global trade routes and creates a strong foundation for regional integration. This will deliver benefits over the years to come. So whilst hydrocarbons are still important to the GCC economy, other sectors such as logistics, petrochemicals, professional services, tourism, and others are also playing an increasingly central role in supporting economic growth. We have moved from bringing in international firms to export our oil to building a local role in the hydrocarbon industry and utilizing our resources to develop downstream industries such as petrochemical, aluminum, and plastics. Likewise, the wealth that oil and gas generate is increasingly being invested in the local economy, through institutions based here in the region, staffed more and more by highly skilled locals. And increasingly, we are also transforming wealth below the ground into sustainable industries such as manufacturing and financial services and a highly skilled population. So there is a good reason to be positive about the current state of the economy, of the GCC economy. But the challenges for us should be to ensure that our current prosperity is not something that we look back on in 30 years as a short-lived golden era or age. After all, oil will not last forever. We need to make sure that we develop economies that are able to thrive in the post-oil era. And as the population continues to expand, there will continue to be a growing number of young people coming into the workforce. And no one here wants to be at a conference like this in 20 or 30 years and be sitting on a panel session to work on how the Gulf state squandered the gift of prosperity and left a legacy of unemployment. Our current achievements, positive as they are, offer no basis for complacency. We need to continue reform. We need to continue to do more of the kind of work that delivered these success but we need to do it in a way that is smarter and even better. If we are to maintain and increase our current level of prosperity for the next generation, and if we are to ensure that the benefits of this growth are shared widely across society, we need to continue to invest in economic diversification. Obviously, that is something easy to say, but very much more difficult to achieve. Partly, it means continuing to invest in the infrastructure and frameworks that will enable different industries to thrive. Building the airports, seaports, the railway that move people and goods around the region and connect us with the world. Working on the regulation and legislation that reassure investors and enable growth. Making sure we have strong institutions that can finance our continued development. Above all, we need to invest in our precious resource, our young people who make up 50% of our population. It will not be enough to ensure prosperity on its own if we don't also invest in the education and training that will give the young people coming into the workforce the necessary skill and knowledge to compete in this global world. As well as giving people an education, we also need to encourage the right attitude. And if our children leave school thinking that all they need to do is to wait for the government to give them a job, then we have failed them. I was delighted to read a recent survey by Ernst & Young that found 70% of young Bahrainis were interested in the idea of starting their own businesses. That's exactly the sort of attitude that we need if we are to meet our aims. Our goal must be a productive, innovative economy that generates ideas, products, services locally and sell them to other markets. Only this can ultimately give us the foundation for sustainable private-led growth. The purpose of economic growth should be to create a high-quality job and opportunity for people in the region, to allow them to share in the nation prosperity and to ensure that the growth is sustainable in the long term. As I said at the beginning, my remarks today have been focused only on economic matters, but in truth, political stability can never be fully separated from jobs and prosperity. After all, maintaining the economic opportunities for the next generation will be an important part of maintaining political stability. That's not to say that shared prosperity and GDP growth alone are enough on their own. We know that political aspirations are about more than just that. People who have a good education and a rewarding job are much more likely to feel that they have a stake in society. And when it comes to creating these jobs or those jobs, foreign investments will be of central importance. So I hope you leave the event tomorrow evening with a sense of not just the challenges the region is facing, but also of the opportunities to invest and to help achieve stability through economic sustainability. Thank you very much.
I think we're happy to take a couple of questions before we end this part of our program. So if there anyone who would like to ask the Minister any questions, please feel free to stand up and a mic will come to you. We hear that you're likely to have elections in November. I was wondering whether you'd like to say a little more on how you see the political evolution here in Bahrain, which would, of course, be a factor that would influence thinking of businessmen when looking at Bahrain.
So as I said in my speech, that such events tend to focus on political risk and they forget about the business opportunity, and the first question was about politics. You know, Bahrain, we have exposed ourselves compared to the other people in the region. His Majesty the King has unleashed a comprehensive political and economic reform earlier in 2002. And of course, the country has gone through a national debate about the base of reform. But reform is happening in all area, political reform, economic reform, education reform, labor market reform. And we are proud of what have been achieved over the past few years. Of course, the election is coming, and we hope that the process will be inclusive and everybody will participate in this election. But irrespective, Bahrain has a clear vision. We know that Bahrain is for all Bahrainis, and we need to build together Bahrain for all. We have a 2030 vision, which is clearly have 3 principles, and we have clear objective about what we want to achieve. We hope that the election will be successful and the legislative body in Bahrain will work with the government to achieve the Vision 2030. As part of the government, we are working in all ministries and all government entities to prepare strategic plans with the clear objectives and key performance indicators in order to serve the people of Bahrain and to ensure that they are satisfied with the performance of the government. It's not easy to do everything from day one or to do it from after 10 years of starting the process. You know, the process in Bahrain started 10 years, and it is a process. Everybody is learning in this process. MPs are learning how to become accountable and address the real issue about Bahrain. The government also is learning how to make themselves more accountable and transparent, as well as the people of Bahrain are learning in this process how to select the right people to represent them and to make sure that they are their voice in the parliament. So I think we are learning, everybody is learning. The most important thing that reform will continue, as His Majesty always said. We are learning from our mistakes. The government is also learning to provide better service for the government. Of course, nobody can claim that we have achieved everything. We need to continue working hard. We need to invest in our people, empower our people, the Bahrainis, to have the skill and the knowledge to compete. And I think in Bahrain, we are not blessed with the high indigenous resource like other countries in the region. We don't have a lot of gas and oil, and shortly we'll start even importing gas. And therefore, we are only relying on our resources, and other nation has made it with their resources. And I think Bahrain, with their location, with their strong fundamentals and foundation, the regulatory environment, the infrastructure we have, I think we have all the prerequisite, the value proposition to attract more investment to Bahrain. And I'm optimistic about the investment that will be announced shortly in Bahrain. I think during the next 4 years, there will be a lot of infrastructure and development that will boost the economy and maintain growth. As you can see, our growth is recovered. Last year, we have 5.3 GDP growth. And this year, we may be between 3.5 to 4, but it will be mainly in non-oil growth. So it's real growth and not only relying only in the oil sector.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Emil?
Thank you. I have a question. A couple of years ago, in 2011, the GCC announced a $10 billion financial assistance plan to Bahrain, also Oman at the time. Can you tell us a bit more about this? Is the money coming in? Are the projects being launched? How are you making the most out of those 10 billions? And to what extent are you really coordinating with the donor countries? I mean, how much can you tell us about this? That would be very useful. Thank you.
Yes, again, when I was talking about projects, I was considering also the GCC Fund as part of it. 7.5 million worth of project has been already identified, and they are in the planning stage. Some of them are in tendering process. Some of them actually will start very shortly, and they cover different areas. Some of them will be in the housing. Some of them will be in electricity and water, and also a big portion for a new terminal building that will be built for Bahrain International Airport. And we are working closely with the countries, everything done through them, and the tendering process is very stringent. So shortly we will, I think, announce the start of some of the projects. And I am responsible for the Bahrain International Airport, and I know that we have finalized the design. Shortly we will share it with the people of Bahrain, and actually we have already issued one tender for the enabling work, and the main work tender will go out by January 2015. So as I said, we are optimistic all these projects will be implemented, and it is a reversible process. It is not only talking. This is why we are quite in the media, because we wanted to start and then we can talk about it and share it with the people.
Thank you very much. My name is Stenberg. I'm ambassador of Norway, resident in Abu Dhabi. You talked about youth. You talked about entrepreneurs. I'm sitting next to a young Bahraini entrepreneur here. Maybe that has inspired me. It also allows me to give a fun fact about Norway, who's also, as you know, a petroleum-based economy. The fun fact is that in GDP terms, the contribution of women to the Norwegian economy is greater than the contribution of petroleum. So my question to you is, and we are seeing very clearly that the female role in our economy is strengthening and is getting more and more important. So of taking care of the young and taking care of the coming generation, do you have any particular thoughts about the contribution of the female gender to the Bahraini economy in the future? Thank you.
I think in Bahrain you will find everybody, when you talk about women participation, they will say, of course. I mean, they are an important asset of any community, and you cannot improve and increase the productivity of any economy unless you get the maximum from women, and they are an important contributor to any economy. So for us in Bahrain, they are everywhere. I can tell you about my organization. I am the only man actually in the management team, and it's so difficult to deal with them, by the way. And they are, to be honest, even our education system output, you can see the gender gap. You see most of the ladies are doing fantastic with their grades and with their marks, but we have actually issues with the male, which is something that needs to be addressed not only in Bahrain, but across, I think, the Gulf countries. So I think they are improving themselves. They are shortly will be everywhere. We have ministers, we have them in the parliament, we have them in the Shura Council. We have them, I think, in the judicial system now. So there is no reason to be anywhere. And I think without them, the economy will suffer.
Your Excellency, you mentioned something about innovation, and that is something that you want to see more. But some surveys were made, and the results of which indicate that we are not scoring well on innovation. So how does the government of Bahrain intend to fix this problem? Okay. You are considering it instrumental, very important, while we are not doing very well according to the surveys that were made. Thank you.
I fully agree that the whole region are not doing enough with innovation, and we are still user of technology, of course, which is better than have no technology. I mean, we started our development or the industrialization of our in this part of the world by importing technology and even importing the people who is using the technology. Today we have the technology and we have people local who are using the technology, but we don't produce technology. And this will not happen, I think, in one day. It needs an ecosystem. It needs to start from school. It needs to start with a good higher education system. In Bahrain, and even I think in the Gulf, I believe that our higher education institutions are linked to the private sectors. And unless they are closely working with the private sector to identify area that they can do research about them and address issues within existing factories, I don't think anything will be unleashed. But as I said, it is not only higher education, it has to start from school, from our curriculum. And it is also, innovation is linked to entrepreneurship, and it's linked to the ecosystem that we need to create about encouraging people and changing the attitude of only asking for jobs to create jobs for others and become an employer, incubation, access to capital, access to land. All these things has to be addressed in order to change the mentality of our people and the attitude of our people. So I think what we need to do now, we cannot do everything, or we cannot start from scratch. We have to start from where the rest has, let's say, finished. So I think for a country like Bahrain, for example, we will shortly share with the people of Bahrain some initiatives, and it's mainly with the higher education institution. Today, actually by law, our higher education institution is supposed to spend 3% of their revenue in research. but they do nothing actually. What they do, maybe they send some of their faculty to do some PhD, but not even in the relevant cluster. We cannot do research everywhere. We have to select the area that you want to concentrate on. And I think there are areas relevant to us where we can dig deep about them and educate our people, our let's say faculty, and as well as private sector leader in this area, and start improve the services or the goods that we are producing. I don't have all the answer about innovation. I think we need a system and test to start from school. And it is about private sector, it's about higher education institution, it's about our education system, as well as the ecosystem that need to be created for the entrepreneurs. All these together, I think, has to be interrelated in order to have an innovative system. And we need to encourage idea. People, it should be easy for people to fail. So bankruptcy law, again, regulatory framework has to exist in order to enable innovation and entrepreneurship.
This is Abdul Khaliq Abdullah from the United Arab Emirates. Just a very brief question. We heard today about the new Causeway, the bridge between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. I wonder if you could just tell us more about when this thing is going to start. And following on this is, whatever happened to the causeway between Qatar and Bahrain, the bridge between Qatar and, is that still on the agenda, please? Thank you.
I can answer you about the first question. Of course, both of them are important, and we need to have Bahrain linked to all the GCC countries. It will be good. Being an island, it is important that you are well connected to everybody, and to be connected between a country which has the large reserve of gas, like Qatar, and a country which has the large reserve of oil, and we are in between, will be fantastic. But I can tell you about the recent announcement the new causeway. This new causeway will be part of the GCC railway network, and it will be built in order to accommodate the new rail system, which will serve both passenger as well as to transport goods, and also there will be additional lanes for cars. So we are now working with our partners in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We have almost finalized the routes of this causeway, and currently there is a team who is working in the other issue, which is more of technical and the financial model that we need to do, whether we will finance it by private sector or it's a private public partnership. These things will be finalized shortly by the end of the year, and hopefully also we will have a clear programs, implementation of programs. I cannot tell you exactly when it's supposed to finish, but we want it as soon as possible.
Your Excellency, Mr. Kamal Ahmed, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to come between you and your meal tonight. We are already a bit behind our schedule. I just want to thank Mr. Ahmed and the EDB for the tremendous support they have extended to the IISS here in Bahrain, and in particular the Geo-economics and Strategy program. The essence of this program is really to understand how business interests and business opportunities are defined and shaped and influenced by the political environment. And the way in which we have conceived this program, we find increasing resonance in the thinking of corporations around the world. They come to us to understand the geopolitics, not just of this region, but of different parts of the world, because almost every major company today is transnational. Their footprints cut across countries. They are no longer confined to one country. And therefore, an understanding of geopolitics has become central to the analysis of political risk of companies. So this is one part of the IISS that has a direct link to the corporate sector. And this particular conference, which we have organized today and tomorrow, is in fact an outreach of the Geo-economics program to the business community in the region and outside of the region. I thank each one of you for having joined us this evening. I'm sure you'll enjoy and benefit from our deliberations tomorrow. But finally, a word of thanks to Mr. Kamal Ahmed for being here with us. Thank you.